What's going on, Cavs fans? Spencer German with you. Spencer Davies on site at Rocket Arena, where the Cavaliers finished the 2024-25 campaign with a loss, unfortunately, to the Indiana Pacers. 126-118 the final. Spence got treated to a double over. Don't know why they didn't play a double overtime game all season, and they picked the last game of the regular season with the backups playing for it to be a double overtime game. But here we are, man.
Yeah, here we are in a beautiful Sunday night, Sunday outside, sun shining, the Masters tournament's going on. But hey, you know what? We get to do this stuff, and we're really a privilege to do it. It was cool to see the guys that don't usually get playing time play as much as they did today. Kenny even thought they ran out of gas in the second half, but man, that first half was really fun just to see Imani Bates get going. Jalen Tyson had the ball in his hands. Craig Porter Jr., until the fourth quarter, had been playing excellent. And Naquan Tomlin really looked good too. So a lot of the guys from the Charge did some really good things today. And I thought that it was also really cool to see Jared Allen check in for game number 82 to play all of them through the regular season. And he even got a three-point attempt up. He missed it, but at least he got a dime out of it.
Yeah, no, obviously we're glad that Derek got to finish his season-long goal of playing the entire all 82 games, which was awesome. I love the fact that we got a Jalen Tyson game here at the end of the season. We know how hard he's worked. We know he talked about trying to crack the rotation in his first season. So to see him play, and we know fans love Imani Bates. So if you were at the game or if you were watching at home, in between the Masters, you had a chance to sort of see some of the young guys that fans are excited about play and do some fun things today, which was nice. But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, Spence, not a ton X's and O's wise we need to take away from this game. We know it was a lot of backups played. But more so, I think just kind of reflecting on the season. And as we look back here just momentarily, because we will talk about this more in depth on the podcast this week, but just what kind of stands out about there's a ton, obviously, but what are you going to sort of look back on and think about most, or what characterizes this team the most as you think back to a season where they post the second best record in franchise history, 64-18, and obviously accomplished a ton already before we to playoffs where we know the big goals and the bright lights are on them?
Very, very loaded question. I think offensively is where they made their biggest leap. They share the ball and they trust one another. They obviously can get going quickly, and when they're making their shots, they're extremely difficult to beat. I think defensively, there's a lot more left in the tank for them to guard the basketball and to make sure that they're getting out in transition, getting these rebounds that they haven't been getting post All-Star break. There's nothing on this roster that tells me they can't win a championship. Like that's what I learned about this Cavs team, and you're going to see some really good stuff on YouTube from Tristan Thompson post game when I upload what we talked about. And he was just saying that you got to be good, you got to be great, not good in the postseason. And these guys are hungry. They obviously know they left a lot of meat on the bone last year, and they have some unfinished business. But on the season itself, I just think you learned a lot about Evan Mobley. You learned a lot about obviously Darius Garland coming back from everything that he had to deal with, and Donovan Mitchell taking the step to the side and being more of a leader. And then Jared Allen just being the Iron Man of the team. You learned about the depth of having Ty Jerome in the mix. Bringing in DeAndre Hunter to be someone off the bench that has given the Cavs some type of weapon they haven't had in previous seasons with that wing position. I think that you learned a lot. Like you can just go down the list about what all these guys have done, and the depth to me is really what stands out. I don't know how much you're going to utilize that in the playoffs, but it's certainly been big to get these guys to this point healthy and unscathed going into the first game of the playoffs next weekend.
Yeah. Well, a ton to unpack there when we drop a couple episodes of the podcast this week, Spence, but I'll hit real quick just on the depth part of that, because like we've always talked about, we know don't necessarily go all 4 rounds of the playoffs if they get there, running 10 deep necessarily, but having that depth is a luxury, and it's something that the Cavs did not have the last couple of years under JB Bickerstaff. And so how he deploys those guys, how he sort of makes it work, what sort of parts and pieces he moves in and out of certain lineups and rotations is going to be fascinating to watch. And it's one of the biggest reasons why this Cavs team has a legitimate chance to make a deep run in the playoffs, among other things, which, like I said, we will talk about on the podcast this week. Just some final thoughts, Spence, on how the standings sort of shook out today. We got the final sort of everything aligned in terms of the play-in tournament and all these different things. The Magic get the 7 spot. So they will host the Hawks to try to play into the 7 seed. The loser of that game ends up playing a second game to try to get the 8 seed, and the Bulls and the Heat will also square off to sort of have some potential to get a potential push to be the team that plays the Cleveland Cavaliers potentially. Just what do you make of those teams and sort of where things fell as the season comes to a close?
Well, I don't know if the Cavs end up playing the Magic. I think the Magic can win that game. They're hosting the Hawks. They play a really physical brand of basketball, and the Hawks are a little bit too inconsistent for my liking, but I could also see the Hawks winning that second game against one of Chicago or Miami. That's the thing. That's really hard to tell what's going to happen in the play-in tournament, which I thought was fascinating. If you watch Kenny Atkinson's pregame press conference that I uploaded during halftime, he was talking about how each assistant coach is assigned to a certain amount of teams throughout the season to scout, and they're kind of locked in on all of the possibilities. But Kenny said that he's not going to really go to those guys until the field is whittled down to those last two, who will obviously play on Friday night to determine who's the number 8 seed. So that determines how quickly you get prep, how quickly you get information to players, and then you really put a game plan together. I think this week's more about recovery and getting more kind of development and getting the guys back onto the same page together as a team and getting some practice time in before the real thing starts. So that I think is the way that they're going to handle it. But I did want to say one thing before we got out of here. Tristan Thompson, shout out to Tristan. My man played 42 minutes tonight, the most he's played since January 2020.
Wow.
And he's also
is that the most played by any player this season too?
No, 46 minutes tonight, 45 by Naquan Tomlin.
Okay, yeah,
tonight.
That makes sense. That makes sense because there's a bunch of guys that played a lot of minutes tonight. Yeah, that's fair.
A lot. And Tristan, to be honest, Tristan is the one. He got 20 boards tonight too.
Wow.
So he hasn't done that since the 22nd season too.
Yeah, just real quick on the field, we've talked about it a little bit, but I think all those teams present interesting challenges for their own reason. Not that I'm worried about the Cavs, but they all present different sorts of challenges that the Cavs will have to deal with. I would still say Cavs in 5 against any of those teams, but we'll see how that sort of sorts itself out. Anything, Spence, real quick, before we go on what we can expect practice-wise? Because Spence and I will both be doing our best to cover practice and things this week and get you ready for the playoffs to start next weekend. We'll have a couple episodes of the podcast, but I just want to see if anything was said about that after the game.
No, not too much on practice. I know they're going to try to get their individual stuff in on Tuesday, but they'll be back at it on Wednesday to be able to do, their usual thing. And again, just kind of get scrimmages together and then just start the playoff prep from there. They're not going to know their opponent, again, like I said, until Friday evening. So that's impossible to prepare for. But I feel like they'll be locking back in starting Wednesday. And then from there on out, practice every day up until the day before, I would assume. So.
All right, well, that gives you a good lay of the land in terms of where you can find Spence and I throughout this week. Like I said, we're going to try to drop 2 episodes of Courtside with us on SI this week, probably one on Tuesday, and then probably one later in the week, so stay tuned for that, please. We encourage you to follow, subscribe, comment at the Cleveland Cavaliers and SI YouTube channel. You can also find that podcast, though, wherever you get your podcast, and check out any of the post-game commentary, the press conferences that Spence got up there from today's game over at the YouTube channel as well. And as always, you can read our written content over at Cleveland Cavaliers and SI or si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. Spence, get on home, finish watching the end of the Masters, my man. It's been a fun day, I think, over there, so I'll let you get home, and I look forward to a number of conversations as we get ready for the playoffs this week, man. We'll make sure we do it big.
Sounds good, buddy.
Thanks for watching, as always, guys, and keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.